Leaders had efforts to raise private donations for tsunami relief.
An Atlanta filmmaker journeyed to Sri Lanka 3 days after the tsunami, and he spent 3 weeks capturing the human side of the disaster. His name is Eric Williams. He's preparing a documentary that's going to be titled Walking Wounded. Williams shared with CNN a few of the highlights from his film, as well as his own emotional response to what he saw. Here now, in his own words, his story.
Here, rescue workers dispose of bodies. There's babies' bodies being tossed into the grave. Another body being tossed into the grave. You can't hold back, your feelings inside when you see stuff like that. It's about, honestly, letting people experience what I experienced. They bring the bodies in these trucks, and all throughout here, from this point all the way down, are nothing but bodies. And the smell was so strong that you could only stay there for a couple of seconds before you had to back away. You ride from neighborhood after neighborhood, body after body, road after road, flat, gone. This was the first scene that I witnessed in Bandiachi. I had to really sleep in a car for the majority of the time, and I subsisted on crackers and water. These people have been left in utter poverty. Just like all the other people in America that were moved to send money, I felt that I was compelled by God to go. This mosque was totally underwater. People had to seek refuge on the tops of the mosque. My assignment was to go over and show a more personal, human side to the tragedy. And I think that when people watch this film, if you don't become moved by it, then surely you need to check yourself.
From the 11 Alive Studios, this is UPN Atlanta News at 10.
A black filmmaker based here in Atlanta witnessed the devastation of the deadly tsunamis firsthand, and tonight he shares his view with the world. Welcome to UPN Atlanta News at 10, where you get all the news in half the time. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Greer. Tonight's big story, an up-close and personal look at the deadly devastation of the tsunamis. A local filmmaker captured heart-wrenching images across Southeast Asia just 3 days after the tsunamis hit. UPN Atlanta Suzanne Marquez joins us now with more. Good evening, Suzanne.
Good evening, Karen. Tonight, Eric Williams premiered his film Walking Wounded at Emory University. He traveled to Southeast Asia alone, met friends along the way, trekked through dangerous rebel areas to capture a different side of the tsunami.
First of all, I'd like to thank God for allowing me to be able to stand up here in front of you all today. Until you actually witness it and go upon the scene, it's all a figmentation of your imagination. I didn't get a chance to see the news broadcast that everyone over here saw. But it becomes real so quickly once you see the dead bodies and the little babies and the damaged homes and the destitute families. It becomes real. We'll be compelled to continue your journey to help the ones in Southeast Asia.
When documentary filmmaker Eric Williams saw the tsunami on TV, he packed his camera and flew to Southeast Asia 3 days after it hit. Over the next 3 weeks, he captured survivor stories with relief workers from California.
And the wave hit the train, and then they realized what was happening, and they all turned and fled in this direction. But by the time they reached here, already the water was up to their necks.
This derailed train was called the Sea Queen. It's now a tangled mess of iron and wire, where 1,000 passengers were swept to their deaths.
So we arrived there, and lo and behold, they were still pulling bodies from the trains. And the trains were still on their sides. The stench of death was still in the air. The devastation was everywhere.
Mile after mile, grim reminders of the force of the tsunami. Water wiped out so many lives, so Williams focused on the land.
You will not see but one shot of the wave in my entire film. We've been bombarded and sensationalized with the wave, but we've forgotten about the human struggle and the human suffering of the people.
Williams has worked for National Geographic. His documentaries have aired on CNN and MTV. If you would like to watch Williams' film in its entirety, you can find a link on our website at 11alive.com. Suzanne Marquez, UPN Atlanta News at 10.
Tonight, an Atlanta filmmaker debuted his documentary on the tsunami disaster.
Eric Williams traveled to Sri Lanka just right after the tsunami struck. The world premiere of Walking Wounded was held this evening at Emory. 11 Alive's Suzanne Marquez has more.
First of all, I'd like to thank God for allowing me to be able to stand up here in front of you all today. Until you actually witness it and go upon the scene, it's all a figmentation of your imagination. I didn't get a chance to see the news broadcast that everyone over here saw. But it becomes real so quickly once you see the dead bodies and the little babies and the damaged homes and the destitute families. It becomes real. We'll be compelled to continue your journey to help the ones in Southeast Asia.
When documentary filmmaker Eric Williams saw the tsunami on TV, he packed his camera and flew to Southeast Asia 3 days after it hit. Over the next 3 weeks, he captured survivor stories with relief workers from California.
And the wave hit the train, and then they realized what was happening, and they all turned and fled in this direction. But by the time they reached here, already the water was up to their necks.
This derailed train was called the Sea Queen. It's now a tangled mess of iron and wire where 1,000 passengers were swept to their deaths.
So we arrived there, and lo and behold, they were still pulling bodies from the train. And the trains were still on their sides. The stench of death was still in the air. The devastation was everywhere.
Mile after mile, grim reminders of the force of the tsunami. Water wiped out so many lives, so Williams focused on the land.
You will not see but one shot of the wave in my entire film. We've been bombarded and sensationalized with the wave, but we've forgotten about the human struggle and the human suffering of the people.
Suzanne Marquez, 11 Alive News Tonight.
If you would like to watch Williams' film, you can find the link on our website, 11alive.com.
An Atlanta filmmaker travels to southern Asia to document the tsunami's aftermath. You'll hear his story. Scientist shows how the deadly tsunamis that killed more than 150,000 people sent ripples around the world. The magnitude 9 quake that unleashed the waves is said to have had the force of 1 million atom bombs.
An independent filmmaker from Metro Atlanta has just returned from the Southern Asian tsunami disaster.
He says what he saw has changed him, and hopefully his efforts to aid tsunami victims will make a difference. Fox 5's Tony Thomas has the story.
This was Banda Aceh in Indonesia.
Eric Williams' passport is nearly full after all the countries he's visited the past 16 days. His body suffers jet lag, his mind overwhelmed by what he witnessed.
I remember filming in particular a mass grave site, and they brought in a bunch of little kids' bodies. And, you know, man, it's tough. As a journalist and a filmmaker, you try to be objective, but this particular story, it touches you. When I arrived in Banda Aceh, I wasn't expecting the sheer and utter devastation that I witnessed there. I mean, everything was just totally flattened. I mean, you look at a city like the size of Atlanta, in every direction you turn, everything is flat.
Williams is making a 90-minute documentary out of his trip, mainly following these 4 relief workers from California.
Diane's ready to leave the hospital. Where will she go? She doesn't know.
And so it really helped to bridge the gap between the American side of giving people an idea of how Americans can view this from their standpoint, with Americans being the center point and the devastation being the thread to build it all together for a long narrative piece. When you can look death in the face and, you know, you think about the people, the lives they lived, just like people here in Atlanta. They lived normal lives, and, you know, their life was now relegated to an orange body bag.
Williams hopes to get the finished documentary on a national cable movie channel. He also wants relief organizations to use the documentary as a fundraising tool. In Rockdale County, Tony Thomas, Fox 5 News.
Eric Williams says the trip cost him about $15,000, money he's not sure he'll ever recoup. But the filmmaker says it's well worth it if his video can help raise money for tsunami victims.
this week, we've seen just how desperate the people of Haiti are to flee their homeland. Photojournalist Eric Williams has captured their despair firsthand. His work explores the realities of living in the Northern Hemisphere's poorest nation and the people he describes as nice, warm, and compassionate.
I chose to go to Haiti because of its news value at the time, and it still is, and the situation that's going on over there with the embargo, and how the embargo has affected the kids and how it has worsened the poverty in Haiti, and that's why I chose to go. After my first trip, I was shocked. I was astounded by the fact that we as Americans take so much for granted, such as washing our clothes, brushing our teeth, taking a bath. And when I saw this poverty around me, it just knocked me off my feet in a sense that I became addicted to wanting to be a part of their life and try to understand what they're going through in my photography. And I guess that's what's motivated me to continue the process of going back and documenting the Haitian problem. I chose to focus on the kids because they're the ones that are the future of Haiti, and they're the ones that are being affected the most. I didn't really choose to focus on the kids until after I got to Haiti and I saw the conditions in which they were living in. This particular picture means a lot to me because it speaks on the utensils that these kids use to feed themselves with. This kid brought to the Care Feeding Center a Texaco oil can filled with water, which he uses to drink out of on a daily basis. I'm happy to be able to show people through my eyes what Haiti looks like.
Eric Williams' work is on display at his multicultural art gallery, Expressions, located in Atlanta Underground. Haiti Cries Out will be shown through April.
At 6 o'clock today, we'll be hearing from a local filmmaker who explains why the annual event will probably continue in Atlanta. The local filmmaker who says upcoming national exposure could make, in fact, the party even bigger. Keith Whitney has more.
Photojournalist Eric Williams has seen a lot of things through his lenses: war in Bosnia, AIDS in Africa, revolution in Haiti. But his latest project hits closer to home, documenting the sometimes naked truth about Atlanta's imperiled, raunchy rite of spring, Freaknik.
Oh, Freaknik is unstoppable. Freaknik is stop itself. When people just decide, well, I'm just too old for this thing, and I'm not going to go, and the younger generation will move to a different location.
Williams' images will appear on MTV and BET, giving national exposure to what has become a local embarrassment. The picnic-turned-grope-a-thon, forever to be known as Freaknik.
Those problems are pockets. It's not like the whole entire atmosphere of Freaknik has this molestation attitude where people are going down and just groping and grabbing and doing awful things to women. That happens in pockets.
Among the images, Williams documents the strippers who descend on Freaknik, adding to the burlesque that too often has gotten out of hand.
But if you look at the rest, a lot of them were from gun violence and gun-toting people, not from raping women or molestation.
And that's why Williams says no matter what the city says about it, the party will go on. Keith Whitney, 11 Alive News.
While the Freaknik documentaries have been sold to BET and MTV, the air dates have yet to be released.
The Uganda Children's Charity Foundation, a troop of orphans ages 4 to 16, is trying to bring a little bit of Africa to Atlanta this February. The Tour of Light provides an opportunity to heighten awareness of the critical state of Uganda and its AIDS-related orphan crisis. Joining us this morning is documentary filmmaker Eric Williams to tell us all about it. Welcome to Georgia's People to People.
Thank you.
What made you decide to do this documentary?
Well, actually, I decided after I had received a phone call from a friend here in Atlanta who works with the foundation out of Dallas and indicated to me that they were in need of someone to document the kids coming over to Atlanta. And actually, I expanded on the idea and said, hey, why don't we travel to Africa and actually document the kids in the situation they're in today.
What did you find when you got there?
Really deplorable conditions, kids that are suffering with the HIV virus, kids who have no hope really for the future. Kids living in orphanages, 150 to 200 in an orphanage with one administrator pretty much caring for all of them. Yeah.
It must have, how did that affect you then as a result?
Well, it was a very emotional situation. I had several people that I documented to pass away while I was there. I also saw little kids, little babies with AIDS that really have no hope because they'll be dead before long because they really don't have any treatment in Uganda. So the only hope that they have is just to have the family that they have within the orphanage to care for them as much as possible.
And so you felt you had to tell the story?
Yes, definitely.
For people who may not know the background, you worked with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for many years as a still photographer.
Correct.
And now have gone into video. Was it tough for you to not get involved with your subject, the fact that you were there and were witnessing all this?
Well, actually, it was on certain times when I had to photograph some of the funerals. It was very emotional because I had to really retract myself from the situation in order to keep on track as to what I was doing and trying to document. And then when I got back to Atlanta, then that's really when it hit me, when I was in post-production editing the piece. And then I had an opportunity to really sit down and see the footage that I had obtained while I was there. And so that's when it really hit home.
And now what do you want to do, raise money to try to get these kids?
Yeah, actually I will be going on tour with the kids in January, and we're going to tour the United States. We're going to 11 cities from January up until May, and they're going to be trying to raise the awareness of AIDS in Africa and raise money for the orphanages back in Africa. And so I'm going to show the film on each stop. They're going to have 20 performances in each city, and we're going to have the tapes available that people can purchase it.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you've brought us a clip because we're going to get a chance to look at that clip now.
Thank you.
So people can see what you've seen.
Okay.
Would like to tell you a story.
I am Irene Nakatamatri.
It is a story of incredible despair.
My name is Matthew Zlota.
It is the reality for over 1.5 million orphans whose parents have died of AIDS, war, and multiple diseases.
My name is Cousin Mercy.
It is a story of children raising children.
My name is Brian Tutu.
It is a story of a nation's struggle to provide education, food, and shelter to the hundreds of thousands of young people left stranded, seeking a place to call home.
My name is Awalia Mary.
In the midst of this strife, Uganda and her children still have hope for the future.
My name is Amalai Innocent.
This nation works tirelessly to respond to the present crisis and the enormous challenges ahead.
Hello, America!
When they ran towards the train, the wave hit the train, and then they realized what was happening, and they all turned and fled in this direction. But by the time they reached here, already the water was up to their necks.
Today marks the one-year anniversary of the deadly tsunami that ravaged Southeast Asia. At least 230,000 people were killed, an estimated 2 million left homeless in a dozen countries. 3 days after the disaster struck, independent filmmaker Eric Williams traveled to the region with his camera, and the result is a new documentary called Walking Wounded, The Great Tsunami. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why did you want to go over there?
Well, I really felt compelled by the Lord really to travel to Southeast Asia. It was 3 days after the tsunami hit, and I was watching television just as everyone else. And I really felt compelled to move, like other people were felt to move to send money. I felt moved to pack my bags and go to Southeast Asia.
And this documentary gives us a view of the devastation and the aftermath that you can't get on, say, the network news, right?
No. As a matter of fact, networks came to me for some of my footage. Because I arrived so early, I was there when bodies and body parts and the devastation was still fresh, and the
devastation was just all over. I mean, if you can only imagine being in Oak Cliff and looking from Oak Cliff to downtown Dallas, and everything from there is gone, devastated.
Part of the time you hooked up with some relief workers from California, right?
Yes. I hooked up with some relief workers from California and Colombo, Sri Lanka. These were Japanese Americans who were there to survey the damage to determine what their relief efforts would be for the future.
And for you, this was obviously emotionally challenging, but also physically.
Yes, having to go to an area where there was no place to live, no place to really gather any food, you really had to prepare for that well in advance. So you could only take so much with you. So I had a lot of crackers and I had a lot of bottled water. So pretty much I existed off of that for the 3 weeks that I was there.
What was it like dealing with the people, the folks who survived the tsunami? How were you received and treated?
Well, I was treated and received very nicely. The people were very humble. I mean, it was a very tragic situation. Everybody was still in a state of shock. So while there, you know, it was hard to understand the language, I really got into the country with the help of the Indonesian government and the Sri Lankan government. So, you know, all of that was very traumatic.
What do you hope in this documentary accomplishes?
Well, I hope that it'll answer a lot of questions. I hope that questions will be asked. I hope to maintain a level of awareness for the people that have perished. This is a very tragic and commemorative day for the families that have no one left today.
And you spent, Eric, what was it, a total of 2 or 3 weeks?
3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks.
And certainly captured images that no one else, no other film crews, on many occasions, were able to get.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, thank you so much, and
thank you.
Best of luck. We hope the documentary certainly receives a wide audience.
Thank you.
The film Walking Wounded airs tonight at 10:30 on the Independent Channel, which was formerly known as PAX. You can also watch the documentary online at otbox.org. And still to come here on Good Day, we'll show you some of the best